So again, for people who joined the webinar, so if you look at the bottom of the Zoom webinar, there should be a button for Q&A and also for chat. So you can ask questions. Best way is you use a Q&A because they have a list of questions. So we know which question have been addressed, but also feel free to use chat functionality as well. And also you can use our Telegram group or a Discord. I think Lucas is active on both as well. So let's go. So I think before we have, since we don't have any questions yet, so I'll start with the questions already on our forum. So I'll look at the forum questions and try to answer the most of them. Okay. But feel free to submit your live questions as well. So the first one, it says, so when is a roadmap past the mainnet to be released? And this is one, asking if the smart contract will be implemented. That's first question. The second question, and are we going to ramp up the marketing after the mainnet launch? And are we going to do rebranding or not? So first of all, the mainnet launch is scheduled for Monday, July the 1st. So we were not very well managing earlier. We said June the 30th, which is a Sunday, so which does not make much sense. So it's July the 1st, Monday, and we'll release the mainnet. In the meantime, we'll announce the roadmap beyond the mainnet, as well as some of the economic incentive updates. So we'll try to have more economic incentive for the community. So, and as well as additional product information. So that's for the July the 1st announcement, as well as launch. And I'll let Yilun talk a little bit about beyond mainnet in terms of virtual machine or other functionality related to the mainnet. So Yilun, please.
Yeah. So in terms of the basic, like the idea is that we have a so yeah, as you have mentioned, the smart contract is not our current priority because a few core functions, basically most core functions are implemented natively in NKN, so that we don't need to rely on any VM to support it. So for example, the data transmission, the relay packet is a signature chain, of course, are like off-chain, but they are like in the NKN node natively, and also the name service and PubSub and like quite a few other functions are also like native functions. So that's why we are not in a like hurry to implement VM. So at the same time, we will probably try to evaluate and testing different VM implementations and see if we have we do have like a few good candidates and that we can rely on. Yeah. So basically that's a goal. So we don't have a specific date for the VM yet, but we will get we will definitely give updates once we have more information.
Okay. So then the second question is really about marketing. So we have been looking at different kind of marketing options, and I think the good news is actually we are getting 2 new person to lead the marketing effort. They're based in Beijing for now, so so it's quite recent. I think they are still in the ramping up and planning phase. So what we want to say is like mainnet is not like a single point in time, right? So it's actually really a continuation of what we do, and also the ramp up to what we are going to come up in the next few months. So I wouldn't say it's a single data point or time like a point, but it's more about between July the 1st all the way leading to the end of the year. So I think the marketing effort will be ramped up, and so that's what we have done, and the team is in place in Beijing right now.
Yeah.
So
and also like I also some related stuff is that mainnet, as Bruce has mentioned, mainnet is not a single point. It's a like multi-stage period. So we look at the experience of other blockchains. So and typically it took like quite a few months for mainnet to fully like work fully and integrate with like exchange or basically everything. So yeah, so it's not just a single point, and also it's just a start. So I saw a lot of people asking what NKN will do after mainnet, as it sounds like NKN will be like mainnet will be the end of the the end version or the final version of the product. Actually, this is not true. So I would say that so mainnet is just a start. It basically means the 1.0 release of NKN, but no, a product never ends at a 1.0 version, right? So it just means that the basic functions in NKN are complete, but there are still quite tons of things to do, from like tech part, marketing part, or product part. So I can probably share some like thoughts or information about the technology part. So basically, from the tech part, we have quite a few functions that we can like try to that we are planning to implement, and also a long list that we are trying to optimize. And also from the product side, so the 1.0 means that the SDK is kind of stabilized and will not change dramatically in a very incompatible way. So we can start try to push out the SDK and try to gain more like attention among developers and also other people trying to ask them to use it. We cannot do it before because SDK is changing sometimes multiple times every week, and we cannot say that a product built on NKN does not work after a few days, right? So that's why we say mainnet is just a start. And also in terms of the product, we will also try to spend more effort trying to build on like workable product in multiple aspects. And all those kind of things happens after mainnet. So that's why mainnet is just a start. It takes really, really long time for us to like do more things and the rise and in terms of everything.
Okay. So I will have a few more additional things about what will happen like at the mainnet and then beyond mainnet. So I quickly mentioned that we will have some additional economic incentive. So we are considering issuing a kind of gas token on top of the NKN platform. So of course the name will still to be determined. And the main idea is really to enable, so if you look at the NKN is more like the governance token for the NKN network, right? So and we are planning to introduce staking, mostly for the security of the network, right? And also give the token holders additional incentive to work on the platform. And also this gas will be the new gas will be paid for the operations of the network. For example, if you need to use a CDN service, or if you need to use a web proxy or acceleration proxy. So the gas token will be used for all the transactions operations of the network, and also will give the miner additional incentive if they do staking as well. So those are the few things, economic model, we are thinking to enhance our economic model, because I think there's a lot of experiment in the industry. We do think staking is a kind of a pretty, at least a field-proven kind of solution, and also how to further incentivize the miner as well as the people who actually run the value added services on top of NKN. We think we should need additional incentive for them. So those one, and also to do that, we want to use this new kind of proposal approach, more community discussion approach. I think Yilun already have published quite a few new kind of proposal, or NKP, in terms of technology proposals, and you can see from our forum. So for those kind of regarding the gas token, regarding the staking, regarding additional mining reward, those will be also written in a new kind of proposal on the forum. So actually the community can help us shape it and refine it and make it. So I think the main idea is, because the network, I mean the crypto network have three major stakeholders. You have the owners of the token, you have the miners, and then you have the development team, right? So we try to make sure that we are not favoring one kind of like a stakeholder over the other one. So everybody have an equal voice. Like that's reason like we have three kind of cornerstones of the ecosystem. And if all of them can have a balance and a benefit from this new economic model, I think that will be very healthy for the ecosystem to continue. So that's what we are planning to do in terms of ecosystem. Yeah. So now let me go look at the Q&A to view some questions from the live questions. Okay.
Yeah, I think the first one we basically have already answered it, right?
From Natoshi Sakamito. Yes.
Yes.
That we already done. Okay.
The second one is about TPS.
Yeah. So yeah, I can talk more about the TPS. Okay. So here is some background. So basically, in terms of the TPS or the performance, we have two bottlenecks. The first one is the networking part, and the second one is the CPU part. So most of our previous effort has been focusing on the networking part because that's what NKN does. We want to try to make sure that NKN has some most efficient networking layer in terms of basically everything, and we are pretty confident of that. So basically that means if someone just try to send a transaction and we ignore how those transactions are verified in terms of CPU time and how they are verified in the ledger in terms of the IO time, then the performance are actually quite great. So I can share some numbers. We did some tests with a very tiny instance on AWS, like global instance. We have like hundreds of the T3.micro instance with only 1 GB of memory. You probably won't see those small instances in any of other benchmark. And we basically ignore the rest of the verification, like the signature verification and database verification. Then we can easily achieve like tens of thousands of TPS. But the other bottleneck, which is currently the one that you may encounter in NKN, is the CPU bottleneck. So this may not be a problem in some of other blockchain because they have super node or like super high computer. But in NKN, we try to make it work for everyone, literally everyone. You know, for those over 10K devices in testnet, as far as I know, there are around like thousands of them that are like small OpenWRT routers, and you do not expect those like small routers to process thousands of transactions per second, right? So that's why I say that the other bottleneck of the TPS is actually what's a typical hardware in NKN's network. If the typical hardware is, let's say, the virtual machine in the cloud, then we can achieve like quite a decent TPS number. But if those majority devices drop down to a Raspberry Pi or like a small router, then definitely the whole network will not be able to process much like transactions per second. We haven't done like large scale testing on the testnet yet because it's kind of we don't know what's a hardware spectrum of the spec of the real testnet. But we can definitely do some more like testing later on our like own cluster. But the reason we didn't focus on it is because the core functions, all the core functions of NKN are purely off-chain. So that means there won't be a transaction on-chain when you send a packet, right? It's very inefficient to do it. So the testnet can handle like millions of packets per second, but it will never be able to hand off millions of transactions per second. Yeah.
Okay. So Yilun, another question on the chat asking, will one-click node be updated at the Google, AWS, and DigitalOcean marketplace on July the 1st?
Yes. So for July so here is something from the principal layer. So for the July, so first of all, the short answer is for this update, yes. But for the future update, we probably won't do it automatically. It's actually not from technology part. It's pure security reason. So if we are able to in the future, so for the first short time in the mainnet as well as the whole testnet phase, we have this kind of auto updating features in one click, which basically fetch the latest code from GitHub and rebuild it if if it finds out that the version is kind of fall behind, right? So this may sounds convenient to like everyone, but it's definitely not a safe thing in the blockchain system, because it's kind of a single point of failure. So assuming if the updating server or like the server that is trying to push the version to every NKN node is kind of attacked and becomes malicious, then it has the ability to basically take down the NKN network completely. It's very dangerous to do that because it's a centralized way. So that's why in the future, sooner or later, we kind of have to drop out the centralized auto-updating feature. So of course, you can try to build your own, or like I believe there will be someone providing a third-party service, but we kind of try to make it like either decentralized or with like multiple centers, so that it won't rely on a single service, a single website, or like a single server to do it, just to be safe.
Right. So there's another question from the chat that's actually related to staking. So the question is from B821. Hi, Bruce. If you introduce staking now, how will this go conform with your previous statements about an open, decentralized network? Thanks for clarifying. So actually, it's not conflicting each other. So the mining is still open without any barrier. So which means any node can join mining without any staking. So if you stake, you earn additional like a gas token, right? But everybody, regardless if you stake or not, you earn NKN, you mine NKN token. So that has not been changed. And that also means there's zero barrier for you to run as a mining node. So just clarify that, yeah. And then another thing I think about our schedule is also like this. So if you look at the typical projects, it could be Cosmos, could be Ethereum. So upon their mainnet launch, the first maybe depends on the time, could be a few weeks, could be a couple months. It's kind of called a security enhancement or the phase. So in that phase, the security and stability is the most important. So we actually might introduce some of the mechanism. For example, we might not provide the swapping tool right away. So you can still mine as the real NKN token, but you cannot convert to, for example, the ERC20 or other token that be tradable. So that's really purely for security reasons, right? So as a fairly new network, so even though we done a very extensive testing on testnet, but to be safe, and we always need to do this extra step of precaution. In addition, I think we'll also do the security audit with a reputable third party. So those will happen like between the first few weeks or maybe a couple months after the mainnet launch. So that's something I think. Yilun, do you have anything you want to add about this, the first phase of the mainnet?
Yeah, I think Bruce said it pretty clearly. Yeah, typically it takes from for example, for Cosmos, it takes a little bit over a month for this phase to be integrated into the exchange and everything. And it's basically that's a kind of idea, and we are trying to push it as fast as possible.
Okay, good. Let's see. So let's see. There's a few more Q&A questions in the webinar Q&A. Again, for the people who join the webinar later. So the best way to ask question is using the button at the bottom of the webinar called the Q&A. So you can ask questions. Then we can track which question has been answered and which one need to be answered. Of course, you are also welcome to use the chat, which is less organized. So just for the later comer. The next question, let me see. So this one is from John. You are doing a great job. So much has been developed and achieved since 2018. Are you still targeting new exchange listing at the moment? And what is your plan in making NKN decentralized if 70% of nodes rely on centralized cloud computing servers? So that's a really good question. So I'm going to answer this one. So in terms of new exchanges, so we have never stopped looking for or working with new exchanges. actually, some of them we have worked for so long, it's not new exchange anymore. It's kind of almost old exchange for us, but of course it's not public yet. So I think our kind of goal of exchange is always like this. So does this exchange provide additional kind of value for the NKN community? First of all, is this reputable, a large volume, and does this address a particular user segment we do not have, like underserved? Or does it have a good reputation and security, right? So, and also, does it have additional benefits in terms of helping us to do marketing and help us reach out to large audiences? So those are kind of guiding principles. If you look at since 2018, so we started with we started with Gate.io. It's not the biggest exchange, but if you look at the real trading volume, it's consistent at about number 10 on the Bitcoin, the Transparency Institute. And then I think earlier this year, we were listed on Bittrex International and also a bit. Both are very, very reputable, and they are medium volume, probably between 10 to 20 kind of ranking in terms of volume. And then the latest one last week, we got listed on Huobi. So Huobi is actually still volume number 3 in volume. If you look at the BTI report, they do have a little bit more algorithm automatic trading, but still, even after you get rid of that part, it's still top 3 in terms of volume. And also, especially in China, they have the fiat gateway, as well as a large audience of following in China, which has been a little bit underserved in the past. So next, if you look at this kind of coverage, so we have Europe and China and of course Southeast Asia, South America, pretty well covered, Africa. So the next one is how to address the U.S. market, right? So that's one obvious question. So we have been actually working with the lawyers and also the U.S. exchange over the last half year or so. So I think the latest requirement, kind of recommendation from them is, because of the legal environment is still very unstable, and especially actually become maybe a little bit worse, especially if you look at the enforcement action from SEC against Kik and Kin, and also a few others. So if you look at like Coinbase or Bittrex US or some of the larger ones in the US, in the first half of this year, not only they did not list any new coins, they actually now actively delisting some of the coins they deem might be risky in terms of SEC regulation. So from that point of view, I think listing on the US exchange will be great for us, but I think it might take time. I mean, not just for NKN, just for any altcoins on the market, right? So what we can do is, we have always been following very closely, is try to make sure that we follow the utility token model, and at least in the early stage, we have very clearly excluded marketing or sales to any US customers, right? So just reduce the ICO part of the risk. And then going forward, I think we're probably more working towards like the BAT or the Brave browser model, right? So really onboarding more users and let the token utility be manifested by the usage application on top of the NKN network. And then I think we have a much stronger case in terms of legal compliance towards SEC. But that's kind of probably a little bit longer journey than we would have thought, right? So mainnet alone will not be enough in this market or in this regulatory environment. So that's the US market. And then people ask about other exchanges, right? I mean, the obvious question is Binance, and also Binance also have the decentralized exchange. So we're under NDA and discussion with them, and I mean for a long time. So what we can say at this moment is, I think for example, for the decentralized exchange, we are technically ready. So we have done some testing on the testnet. Everything is ready to go. So I think it's more about a business decision, and also in terms of timing, when will be a good time to do that. So we don't have any business or technical issues before we moving forward. But I cannot say if or when we will do that, because of the NDA we have with the parties involved. So that's kind of my question regarding exchange. So I think that's John.
Yeah, I see some people are asking like, what's the reason for listing at Huobi at half price? It's not our, it's not our like proposal. I think it's just Huobi has this rule, so we have to follow them.
Yeah. So let me talk about Huobi, because I think this is on everybody's mind, right? So why after Huobi listing and why the token price actually decreased quite a bit, right? So this is actually the fact. So before the Huobi listing, they fast track this. I think the fast track is almost like IEO, but for existing projects, right? So the terms and conditions are actually very clearly announced beforehand, even before the vote, right? So the idea is that the project team will contribute worth up to $500,000 worth of tokens at half price. So at market price, basically it's 1 million worth of NKN tokens, right? So that we give to the exchange, and the exchange will, we all know the voting process. So for whoever voted for NKN, and if NKN wins, then all the people who use a HT, the Huobi token, to vote for NKN will get a proportion of that 500,000 worth of NKN token. So basically, the cost base for those winning Huobi users, I think is 3.35 cents, right? So so I think that definitely have a large pressure on the sales side. And also, I think another one coincidence is the previous winning project, Atlas Protocol, ATP. They won the vote the previous week, but because they have technical issues, technical integration with Huobi, so they actually postponed their actually live trading to the same day as our voting kind of result, and also our listing. So basically, in that one day, the Huobi market have to kind of carry on two large kind of discounted token sale, which is the ATP and as well as NK. So that's kind of the further dilute the capability of the market to absorb these discounted tokens. So I think those are the kind of the larger reason on that particular day, on the opening day and maybe the second day. Then afterwards, I think the Bitcoin just ran like a real bull, right? So when Bitcoin do something like that, and if you look at the dominance of Bitcoin, so it has risen to the highest point in the history of the Bitcoin, right? So I think it's 64% of the total market cap, which means lots of people, they saw this high rise of the Bitcoin, so they probably will sell off their altcoins and then kind of try to profit from the Bitcoin run. So so I think it's not unique to NKN, but unfortunately the timing seemed to be coincident with the NKN sales on Huobi. And if you actually objectively look at some other coins, which is like between 100, like a CMC ranking between 100 to 200, they also lost a lot of their price during the last few days when the Bitcoin is really rising sharply. So I don't typically talk about pricing or speculate about pricing. I'm just trying to kind of looking back and explain the correlation of the market events and why the NKN token have such a kind of negative downward trend in the last few days. So, but I think it's natural. It's only a week in crypto life. People say 1 week in crypto is like 1 year, but if you look at the whole crypto, 1 week is also a small blip in the line. So I think as long as we consistently deliver on our value, because if you look at our lowest point in December last year, right? So we are almost down to below 1 cent. So since December last year, I think you can see consistently a steady growth, which is probably above market. I think it's above market, right? If you look at the 90-day or like 120-day moving average. So I think if you look at this fundamental trend and also see how the project is delivering and also what is coming up after mainnet, I think you should have a confidence that these short-term blips always happen, and we cannot control lots of them. But in the long term, we still very much believe in the project, and we are consistently delivering on what we have promised before. Yeah. So I think enough exchange and the tokens. Maybe Alan, you can pick up some question, technical question for Yilun, so I can drink.
I already saw one.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. You're asking, what like a relationship between the free credit on the cloud platform and the mining. So yeah, you are right. The term says that you cannot use free credit for mining purpose. So that's why we never promote it in any way, and we will not do it either. So in the before it's a testnet phase, so I think it's kind of a little bit in between. But after mainnet, I think it's using the free credit for like mining is definitely like a violation of the term like terms for those like platform like Google Cloud, AWS, or DigitalOcean or something like that. Yeah, and another thing is that a lot of people are like, let's see, yeah. I saw quite a few questions on both here and the forum, like about the NCDN, and people are like wants more information about it from both the business side and technology side. So I can probably tell more about from the technology side, and just a tiny bit of information from the business side for those that we can see. So first of all, so an overview is that people may think that it comes in it may come very late later than other products, but actually this may not be true. So the good news is that we are already testing it with like you can think of it as a Chinese YouTube or something like a tier 1 video platform in China. And we are not just doing POC that no one is actually using. We're actually doing testing in the real production environment. So if you are visiting those of the website, and if you got lucky, and for those small amount of traffic, you may be routed to some of the like our like CDN node. So that's why I say it may come earlier than you thought. And from the technology part, like I see someone asking about more like about the architecture or those kind of things. So first of all, an overview of the CDN is that we're trying to provide more like a comparable service to the traditional CDN service. So that kind of means that it has a central point that is trying to do the scheduling of all those kind of information, trying to gather information, trying to do the scheduling, because the traditional CDN is a centralized architecture. So that's why, although the edge node, those nodes who actually store the data or provide the traffic, they are kind of decentralized and not our nodes. But we have to provide a like more centralized scheduler and monitor to dispatch traffic. And as you mentioned, someone is asking whether a node with a small throughput or bandwidth will be the bottleneck. It actually will not, because the scheduler or dispatcher will kind of know this and dispatch traffic in a like smart way. Yeah, so basically we try to utilize those kind of unused resources on our node in terms of both bandwidth and storage, and the data will be stored purely on the edge node itself. It's purely off chain. It will not be stored on chain, and it will not be shared. Yeah, so that's the kind of basic information.
Okay, so then there's a few partner-related questions. I think I'll let Alan take those in the bundle.
Yeah, I'm gonna take two of them here. First one here is from Andrew. This question was about, my question is about your partners and clients. I know that you are on NDA, but could you bring some info about their typology plus the impacts on NKN projects, etc. So I think what we're, at least on the business side right now, we're really focused on our flagship products that are really coming out after mainnet, and that includes the new kind of CDN and also our pub subservice. And with that, we also have some BD folks in China as well. So we're actually like really targeting multiple markets when it comes to these products. With the CDN, we've actually engaged with quite a few different service providers and also some video streaming services. And also, we actually have an ongoing trial right now with a large tier 1 in China right now. So on that, so I think we've made pretty good progress on both of those fronts. The other question I had here was from it was a question around IoTech. So this is from Jadagar, and last year was amazing seeing NKN and IoTech working together. It was very promising. Will there be any product with IoTech in 2019? You know, we actually continue to work with those folks. In fact, both Bruce and I just did a video with them, which hopefully will be published soon. One of their IO talks, talking about PubSub more specifically, and some other things around the 5G and other kind of network infrastructure kind of trends. But also, we're really working on that second generation of that IoT solution that we talked about last year. So more to come on that one.
Right. So I think just give you a hint. So I think last year was a smart home, was indoors, and this year we'll go outdoors and more towards smart cities.
Smart cities. That's right.
So that's a joint project we are working with IoTeX right now.
Yeah, that'll be exciting.
Yeah. Okay, let me see, Annie. Maybe I'll take a question from the forum as well, because we haven't looked at the forum for a while. So, okay, so this the next question from Antu. I think you are from Finland, so we know you, Antu. So, minor node hardware and connection requirements recommendations on mainnet, latency versus bandwidth, disk space, rewards depending on the previous factors, super nodes or pocket nodes. So I mean, Antti has been our long-term miner. So I think these are questions that are related to mining. So maybe you can pick on the at least the technical part, or
yeah, sure. The short. So basically it will stay as very close to testnet. No super node. So at least for now, no like entry cost or like staking or whatever. It's kind of free to join, and it requires very low basically hardware, but it requires a little bit of the disk space to store the block data. So to give you an idea, a Raspberry Pi works, and especially I probably some of you have already know that there are like Raspberry Pi 4 come up recently in this week, and it just take like probably $30, right? $30 US, and it has a pretty decent hardware. But you probably need like a USB disk or like an SD card to store the blockchain data. And based on our testnet data, you probably need a few gigabytes of disk space per year to store the block data if we have kind of similar TPS as a testnet. But hopefully when we get more like use case and attention, we will have more activity on the blockchain, and you will need more disk space. But I bet you will be happy but not sad because of that, right? And the network, we require as low latency and high throughput network as possible, and it actually increase your like mining reward statistically speaking. And yeah, it's kind of more relative. It's hard to say like what's exactly definition of good and bad. But yeah, pretty much it will stay as very similar to testnet. But the difference is that we are providing more like mining tools that can help miners know more about the node. And this is actually also related to another question on the Zoom, also asking about this one. So we will try to integrate the NKN mining GUI into the NKN node itself. Actually, the PR has already been raised but not merged yet. So basically, you don't need you just run the plain NKND, and you get a web UI automatically to get a real-time stats about your like node and more information. And it will also be able to show your network status in the future. So for example, whether you're like NAT works or you're behind the firewall or those kind of things. And also it will show you some like stats like relay message per second or per hour or something like that. But this, although it's kind of hard to say whether that number is good or bad, but we will try to give as much as information and recommendations as we can. Yeah, that's kind of the basic information.
Right. So I think another question related to mining from John. So how can you make NKN decentralized if 70% of nodes are running on centralized cloud servers? So I think it depends on the overall kind of phase of the mainnet. So I think today on the 0.9 testnet, actually most of the devices are home Wi-Fi routers. So so that's actually, it's already happening. So at least in the Chinese mining community, lots of people are using Wi-Fi routers or network attached storage like like a home hard disk, like a network hard disk to run NKN software. So there's a few benefits to that as well. First of all, of course, it's much lower cost, almost zero cost in terms of as long as you have internet connection, you don't have to pay the monthly VM cost. The secondly is also they typically you can easily upgrade the storage for much higher one. For example, you can plug in a 256 gigabyte of USB sticks, and then you become a very powerful CDN node, right? So you can store some content and also distribute content. So that's related to our CDN service trial with the Chinese tier 1 video platform. So I think over time, I think both platforms have its benefits. That's for the one click, it's definitely much easier. And also I think there's some kind of diversity as well. So I think most of the kind of the testnet nodes are running on DigitalOcean, but also we saw lots of other cloud platform like Voucher, like Aruba, and other lesser known as well. So I think it's a combination. So we will foresee in the mainnet we have large amount of those Wi-Fi routers and home network hard disks, as well as some virtual machines as well. So we think the virtual machine also have a kind of big role because they are very stable and they have really good internet connectivity and they are 24/7, right? So if we offer some of the services like a CDN service to like a YouTube, and so you have to give them, if they are paying us US dollars or RMB, you have to give them some kind of service agreement or service level agreement, which means the system have to be up 99.9% of the time, and we have to be able to deliver, for example, 10 gigabits per second at 2 millisecond latency or 10 milliseconds. So you have to promise some of the service levels. So to do that, I think you do need a combination of the kind of virtual machines nodes as well as home nodes, because the home nodes I think is inexpensive, but the performance can be a little bit unpredictable in some time. So purely by mining, I don't think for example, I also run miners on Google Cloud and AWS as well as DigitalOcean. If it's purely mining, the Google Cloud and Amazon Web Service is totally unprofitable, right? So I will not run that just for profitability on the mining part. But if I can run that for the CDN service and get this additional gas token for the CDN part, as well as I have the stability and I can do staking, right? If I want to do staking, I also want to have a node which is very secure and very stable and etc. Then I can earn additional staking related reward. Then I think that the VPS also makes sense, right? So we cannot say like once we have Wi-Fi node, then the VPS, the virtual machine will be irrelevant. I think they still play a big role, but we need both. So I think 70% decentralization, I think it can be achieved. If you think about 30% VPN, like virtual machines, and 70% Wi-Fi routers and home hard disks, I think it might be possible. Yeah. So that's a little bit longer version. Yeah.
And also like a related question, a related like answer. So how decentralized the system is, it's kind of only depends on, I would say, if there's a short answer, then that's just one factor. That's who is controlling those nodes, right? So assuming if 100% of NKN nodes are running on like all kinds of home routers, but those devices are those nodes or wallet are controlled by us as the team, then it's definitely not decentralized, right? So actually the most significant factor is like who is controlling who has actual control of the node, not where it is running. And plus, yeah, for those cloud cloud nodes, there are like many different cloud providers. So for those like big ones, and Google Cloud and AWS, like Azure, DigitalOcean, and also the Hasner, and all those kind of cloud providers, and all those different data centers in the world. So basically, no one has like full control for most of them, and no one can basically take down most of them at the same time. And even if they fail, it's just like a data center at a certain cloud provider. So yeah, in the worst case, that will be still decentralized enough. But as Bruce has mentioned, we believe that pretty soon, as you will see that it will become much more decentralized, and from the like virtual machine to a lot of the home devices. which have a significantly lower cost.
Yeah. So the next two questions are related to, again, to token price. I will take both. The one is on the Q&A on webinar from BA21. I know it gets annoying, but as an investor, I need to ask you this question. Are you worried about the token price and the profitability of mining? And so, and the other question I'll come later. So of course, we care about the token price. The reason is, I think the token price at the end of the day incentivizes everybody, right? Not only the miners, but also the token holders as well as the team, because the team compensation is also largely in the token. So of course, we worry about the token price, and we want to have a healthy token price. But on the other hand, there are many different ways to influence it. One way is some projects, they might use lots of capital to artificially to manipulate the price. I think you probably can do it in a very short term, right? But unless you have unlimited resource, right? If you have limited resource, you can do it in short term, but then you just run out of steam, and those are kind of artificial, and they're not really, you might actually burn your own resource, so you don't actually have money to develop your products and also build up the business, right? So I think this kind of pure financial engineering, I think it's probably not the way we want to do. The second one is really the long-term value, right? So by having more people running their products on top of your network, have more adoption, have people actually paying like a fiat to use your service, like the CDN service we were just talking about. So you actually receive the US dollars or RMB, and then you have to buy the tokens and to pay for the miners. And that process itself will actually improve the token pricing. So I think that is a sustainable one. And also at the end of the day, as any startup, you do want your product to be used. And I think that's the ultimate success, is your product is a success, right? So that's the second approach. The third approach is really, because we're in a crypto world, right? So there's new business model and new economic model, I think, that start to be experimented and become promising, like staking is one. So I think the staking is really a way for people to really have not only have a kind of a say in the governance of the project, but also they can have additional reward if they actually are willing to lock up their tokens for a good cause, right? Either for the security of the network or for helping people to mine or to etc. So those are the three approaches we look at it, and we probably will do a combination of second and third. So real product development plus business development plus a more innovative token economics from the crypto world. So that's the question. So I think that's done. And the next question is from the forum. So do the team think of locking up their tokens? It would provide huge confidence to the community and would be an incentive for the potential investors. Teams showing their confidence in their projects have always been appreciated by the market. So first of all, most of our team tokens are locked, right? So the team tokens, we have 3-year lockup, and with the first year kind of cliff, and then release every year. So for now, the unlocked part is only 1/3 of the team tokens. And also, I think the team token wallet is being public. And so we do not have any intention to move it in the short term or medium term. The reason is we do have enough cash reserve and also other assets can handle the day-to-day operations for a few years to come. So we do need to sell the team token in order to fund the ongoing activity. So that's one aspect. On the other hand, we do have to compensate some of the team members or core developer, right? So typically, we don't do like some projects that like, okay, the team have, let's say, assume 18%, so everybody get 1%, every team, or everybody get 0.5. We don't do like that. So we do it more like a typical startup. So it's more performance driven, right? So every year we'll evaluate every team member's performance, and then based on their performance and the role, how large the role they play, they will get some token reward. But it's never the whole amount of team token, just give up and then give to everybody. We never do that, right? Because even if the token, the unlocked tokens, some part of it given to each individual core contributors of the team, they still have a vesting period as well. So typically, for example, if today is like 2019, it's May, so we evaluate, earlier in 2019, we evaluate 2018 performance, right? And then we say, okay, in February, we are going to give some token reward to people. And then we don't give that in one installment, right? So we give them maybe half of them upfront, and then the rest in the 6-month or 12-month period. So all this mechanism is try to not only regulate the circulation supply, but also incentivize our team members that their incentive have always been actively aligned with the future development of the project, not just the past performance and etc. So I hope that answers your question. So it's very similar to any startup that how the stock options are giving off. So you can also monitor our team wallets. So they are all public. It's on the ERC20 browser. So you can see there's nothing have been moved.
So yeah, I can take the next one. So
okay.
For like a recap regarding the staking, yeah. So basically, the more information about the staking proposal will be proposed on our forum in terms of the new kind of proposal, short for like new NKP, right? Yeah. So that just as a very short recap, the idea is that basically the current stake as the current token will remain unchanged. Miners still get the current NKN token without any like with basically no barrier to enter. But as we will basically there will be another like gas or utility token issued on top of NKN, and it will be used first of all when as a service charge for different like services, and also as a reward to like staking, as a reward for like stakeholders of the original or native NKN token. Yeah, so this is like a very basic information, and we will see more information in just a few days very soon, and everyone will be able to see and discuss and give suggestions, and yeah, that's kind of the basic thing. And another question by Lucas is about like block size limit. Is it fixed or dynamic, and plans for future related to block size? Yeah, that's actually a very good question. So we did tons of testing or extensive test in our network, and for the background, some of you have already know that NKN differs very significantly from other blockchain because NKN node is very lightweighted. So some of the NKN node is as small as a home router or Raspberry Pi, but some of them are very powerful. Like my personal computer is like running as a miner. So then it makes it hard for us to choose a block size, because it's kind of, we have to find a optimal value that taken all those kind of different specs, different hardwares into consideration. And we believe that in the long term, the best way is to adjust it dynamically. Basically, we try to find a way that using historical data to calculate what's the optimal block size now. But for now, just to be safe, we probably just set the block limit to some pretty low value, and at the beginning of the testnet, we may even like further reduce it to make sure it like is stable, and then we can slowly like increasing it. But in the long term, our goal is to try to find a way to dynamically adjust it so that majority of the device in the network can actually handle it. And also how big is one transfer on average. So for other transaction, it's basically same as most of our blockchain like Ethereum. So to give you an idea, a transfer transaction took around a little bit over 100 bytes, probably 150 bytes or similar to that. A signature chain is significantly larger because the signature chain used VRF, which took basically like 4 times spaces as a regular signature. And also it contains a signature of nodes in that signature chain. So it's significantly larger. It can be up to around like 2 kilobytes. But luckily, the number of signature chain transactions is very, very small. Basically, currently there's only 1 signature chain transaction per block. So it's totally like acceptable. Yeah.
Okay. Alan, you're going to answer Otis Michael's.
Yeah. So there was a question here about, will NKN develop its own service platform showcasing its technologies? The short answer is yes. So NKN is basically a platform as it is. And we've already announced that we're going to have 2 different services that are on that. One is going to be the NCDN, or a new kind of CDN service, as well as pub/sub messaging as well. We think these are a really good fit with the kind of network that we have. And as Bruce was talking about before, having a very diverse set of having cloud, having Wi-Fi routers, having NAS units, things like that, we can actually do some really interesting stuff with that, especially in CDN and also with pub/sub as well. So I think those are really kind of the starting points. But you'll actually see, like, over time, we'll actually be able to add other services and things like that. And we'll also, because we're all open source, other people can actually join those networks as well.
Yep. So maybe I'll answer a few questions, both from the Q&A webinar as well as on the forum. So it's really about the awareness and marketing. So on the Q&A, one person has asked, what is the plan to raise awareness of NKN? And on the forum, from Dayan, there are good chances that NKN will be the most decentralized blockchain with the highest number of consensus nodes. Being number 1 at any parameter in crypto space is a huge deal. Do you have some strategy to use the fact for marketing purpose? And second, have the mainnet reached performance level that fulfill your goals and expectations? What do you plan to improve further? And when we'll see some numbers? So in terms of awareness, so I think you're right. I mean, to be number 1 in any dimension is a great thing. And then also, I think we did kind of pitch this story about we are the largest network in the world to some of the more reputable journals, like journalists. I mean, in crypto, you have one type of media that you pay to play, right? So you pay a few BTC, they will publish whatever paper you want. And then on the other side, you have the Wall Street journals, like, or the Fortune and Forbes, that you do have a story. So that have the largest number of nodes. I think it is an interesting story, but not interesting enough. The reason is, so if you have, just purely by running the largest network, it's not interesting enough for the journalists, because they will say, then what? So what are the use cases? Because I think for most people, they do not understand the TPS or the number of nodes kind of as a pure technical aspect, but they will say, how does that translate to get my life better, right? How does that improve my application experience, etc. So I think probably the better kind of promotion is really, with this largest network, what can you do that is better than everybody else, right? The decentralization is I think it's also a approach towards a goal. The goal is really a permissionless and a free, like a permissionless participation and decentralized finance, etc. So we have to show that for example, the NCDN case is a very good use case when we are going to launch it and announce it. So previously, for example, if you use existing kind of content delivery network or CDN, so even the biggest ones like Akamai or Google Cloud, they probably have 15 to 30 data centers around the world, right? So your video will be streamed out of those 15 to 30 data centers which are closer to you. But because NKN actually already have 12,000, 13,000 in the testnet, we expect to be at least double or more than that. Like, let's assume the 30,000 on mainnet. So the chance that a new node is running very close to you, who is actually using the video streaming or the content application, I think you'll have a much better latency and also throughput, because there's always a few NKN nodes that are very close to you, right? So this is not only a cost-saving kind of problem, like a benefit, but also a benefit of actually providing superior service. So a superior service plus a lower price, that will be compelling to an enterprise like a Chinese YouTube. That's the reason why we have extensive trial going on there. So I think once you get that attraction and demonstrate that benefit to the world, I think we should be able to get onto mainstream media. And of course, we need our marketing team to ramp up, and they can actually effectively get this message out to the journalists and the media. But I think that's what we are doing right now. Yeah. So now it's already 5 minutes past, but since we started a little bit late, we can extend for 10 more minutes. So let's try to finish in about 10 minutes and try to go through the rest of the question. So Alan and Yilun, do you have anything you want to answer?
I saw another question that is asking if it's possible or will be possible to run multiple nodes from the same public IP address. So currently it is not possible. So the reason is actually for security. So I give you a simple example. So assuming that we allow people to run multiple nodes on the same IP address, then if assuming other people are not doing it, then you will definitely do it, right? Because you can run 2, 3, 4 nodes to get twice, 3 times, or 4 times more rewards. So it's definitely beneficial for you. And then everyone have the same logic reasoning, and they will do the same. So the result would be that everyone will try to run as many nodes as possible for the same public IP address. But on the other hand, this does not bring any value to the NKN network, because your bandwidth is just basically a fixed amount, and no matter how many NKN node you are running, it's kind of just sharing that resources. But we want to bring more resources into the network, not just running more copies without bringing more value. So that's something that we don't want to see, because we can foresee that, we can basically predict that whenever it's technically possible to run multiple nodes on the same public IP address, then the result will definitely be that everyone trying to run as many nodes as possible. This only makes the network not stable, and it's kind of a bad thing for everyone. Yeah.
So the next question is coming from the forum from RV. Thank you, Avi. I think you've been very active during the previous AMA in April as well. I think you probably won a t-shirt as well. So these are quite good questions on the forum. So it's really about asking about NCDN. So it's a very long question, so I'll just shorten it a bit. So is NCDN a service that companies will pay premium to use to reduce latency, or will they also be able to save money with it? So basically the question is both, right? So I think the company is still looking for lower cost services, but if at the same time you can provide even better service, I think that will be much more compelling just by cost cutting, right? Because I think that the large players, if they want to get rid of the small competitor, they can always artificially reduce their price, and so purely compete on price is not a sustainable strategy. So that's the reason I think we also can provide the benefits of better latency, so and also more nodes, more reliability there. So I think we have both. And then the second part of his question about the PubSub. So he's actually think that PubSub might not be so interesting because its problem have been solved. So let's put it this way. So PubSub actually is even though it's a little bit publish and subscribe, it's difficult to understand for a typical user, but it actually is the fastest growing segment for developer products. So if you look at PubNub and Google Cloud and Amazon Web Service, they do have that service, and typically it's like a freemium model, so you can use for free to start, and up to a certain level of messages per second or per month sent, you are free, and then after that you will get the monthly subscription fee, and which give you much higher kind of capacity, or give you a persistency, which means all the message you send will be stored and kept safe. So I think we'll follow similar model, and we also have benefits because NKN network to send those messages is almost free, because the miners already get mining reward, and also by sending those messages, I think it's very much what they do anyway, right? So because today the mining itself only costs maybe less than 5% of the CPU and a very small fraction of their internet bandwidth. So I think this is a natural fit for NKN, and also because it's free to start on NKN, and also I think it will attract developers as well, especially if they don't want to maintain a service themselves. So I think this is something we see actually, even though now it's kind of smaller, lesser known kind of product, but I think it have great potential, and also it's almost cost nothing for us to support it. Yeah. Anything else, Yilun and Alan, you want to do until before we kind of close this session?
Oh yeah, there's one. So yeah, just as a related answer to the question you are talking about. So yeah, from so from a more abstract way to say it, basically but I would say every problem the blockchain or decentralized platform can solve can be solved in a centralized way if you trust them or rely on them, right? That's kind of a pretty well-known thing, because it's just basically both are Turing complete, and whatever problem that can be solved by blockchain can be solved by centralized in a centralized way. But it doesn't but it doesn't mean that for a decentralized application you always use all those kind of centralized services, either because you do not trust them or think it's not safe, or because you just want more like more, let's say, for tolerance or all those kind of things, or you probably want to cut the cost, a lot of reasons. So a lot of times decentralized is kind of the preliminary requirement that people want when building an application. But currently, sadly, in a decentralized system, the infrastructure is not well established, so that if you try to build an application, and you will find most of the building blocks are missing. And that's actually, PubSub is among one of them. And I think the significance of decentralized PubSub is that we are trying to provide a necessary or like very important building block in any like decentralized application, because you cannot say that we only do like the betting or this kind of very non-real-time applications and decentralized platform, right? So another question, that's this question, and another question is on the Zoom is it's about do we have like a regular monthly bounty for developer programs, and also are we trying to provide a competition for multiple developers on the same project? So yeah, we do have that developer bounty, and although it's not like a monthly yet, because it's kind of have to be synchronized with our development schedule also, right? But I think after mainnet and our SDK is like stabilized, it makes more sense to make it stabilized. Also, but for the second part of the question, so are we trying to make like more several teams doing competition on the same project? So currently we don't have lots of community developers, enough developers to do these kind of things. Because currently, I think with a small amount of community developers, the best strategy is to try to avoid doing the overlapping things, so that we can reduce the friction among developers and increase the utilization of resources. But on the long run, when we have much more people join the community, I think it may be able to do it, yeah, in the future.
Okay, so we have 2 more minutes, and I'll quickly go through 2 questions. One is from Light My Fire. So he asked, does the team plan to start making money on their products, increase annual profits, open new offices, hold meetings and meetups in different countries, just like default startup from Silicon Valley? Or in the future, the project will be managed by the community, and the core team will become, in fact, part of this community, as, for example, happened in Bitcoin? I think we don't know exactly the future will be, but I think our intention is really the NKN.org will be open source and community driven, and so we will still fully behind it and develop to a very much stable and reliable state. In the meantime, we have the NCDN products, we have the PubSub products. We try to build a revenue stream for the company. I think it's actually healthy for the ecosystem, because as soon as you have real money flow into the NKN ecosystem, I think it will be good for the token holders, for the miners, for everybody. So I think that's definitely beneficial. So again, we have been talking about this kind of analogy before. So NKN.org is the Linux foundation, which is developed open source and Linux operating system. And then NKN, the company itself, is more like a Red Hat. So lots of the people will be on the open source project, but also the company itself will build those products that actually serve a purpose and earn some revenue, and use that revenue to further incentivize the NKN token economy. So that's one. And then the last one, I think.
I can take a quick one. So
yeah, go ahead.
Zhang on Zoom is asking, wouldn't it be good for people to use NKN for free? Yeah, we agree with you 100%. That's why basically, if you try to look at the NKN SDK for now, it costs nothing to send and receive data. Basically, use the basic functions of NKN. Also, the PubSub, everything is free for now, and it will remain free for quite a long period of time until the system got like more load that the miners can have like can use pricing to choose what kind of service they are trying to who they are trying to provide service to, right? But until that point, our vision is that the NKN platform will remain free will remain free for those kind of period of time. So at least for now, it is free, and we agree with you. Yeah.
Okay, I think we are already 15 minutes past, and thanks everybody for joining. I will do this regularly, so don't worry that if you missed this one, and we'll try to get this video processed so we can upload to our YouTube and other channels. And I saw some people want to have a t-shirt. I think Alan will be in charge of t-shirt again, and I saved the chat so we know who was there. And thanks for the good questions, and we'll announce more at the time of the mainnet, so on July the 1st. Thank you.
Excellent.
See you next time,
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.